Okay, so we'll start the final talk of the day. We'll finish about 5:30 and announce where the beer keller is and the live Oompa band, so we can go and get some drinks. And then everyone has to get not hungover for the talks, which will start at 9 a.m. tomorrow. So to close off, because we've only got the one final talk now due to some schedule rejigging, we have Emma and Billy. Emma runs DataKind UK and Billy volunteers at the group. I got that bit right? Yeah. And they're going to explain what DataKind is all about and how we can all get involved. So please welcome Emma and Billy.
Hi everyone, thank you very much. So, out of curiosity, who has heard of DataKind? That's really good. Okay, so DataKind began in New York about 4 years ago. The general gist of what we do is bringing data science to non-profits. So we now have 6 chapters around the world, from San Francisco to Singapore. I run the UK group. And so, yeah. The general gist is, on the one hand, you have data scientists with mad skills, machine learning, predictive modeling, really impressive, and they are pretty much exclusively in the private sector. But we've tapped into this amazing phenomena, which is a lot of them want to volunteer. So, on the other hand, we have charities who have a lot of expertise in their particular issue areas, solving whatever social problem it is. And a lot of them are sitting on significant amounts of data. So they will have a database of every beneficiary they've helped over 20 years. But beyond pulling out the odd number to show to a funder, they haven't really done that much analysis on that data. So what we do is kind of bring these two groups together and we, scope out and manage projects for nonprofits using volunteers. We call them data ambassadors. So Billy was a data ambassador, is still a data ambassador for us. And what I'm going to talk about today is a specific project we ran with Citizens Advice Bureau. If anyone wants to find out more about DataKind, come and chat to me at the end of the talk. So, Citizens Advice. They began, am I going to get this right? I think they began in the First World War. And the idea was they were helping civilians who had problems like they'd lost their ration booklet or they wanted to locate someone. And it was very much kind of citizens helping other citizens. And it began, as you can see, in kind of any makeshift place you could find. This was some army van they had. And it is now massive. There are more Citizens Advice Bureau shop fronts than there are Tesco's in the UK. There are over 3,300 of them. And they help you with, all kinds of problems. They help if you have a problem with housing or immigration, legal matters, consumer issues, whole array of issues. And they're dealing with a lot of people. So this is Obama's inauguration. This is 1.8 million people. Last year, Citizens Advice saw over 2 million people face-to-face in their bureau. On top of these bureau, they also have a hotline where people phone up with issues. They also have this advice guide. Oh, those photos didn't show up. Anyways, whatever. Point is, they're providing a lot of services in a lot of different ways to people all around the country. And they have their finger on the country's pulse, so to speak, on the issues that people are facing. So what that means for us is there's a ton of data. So every time someone goes into a bureau with a problem, it gets logged. So they have a lot of detail of the kinds of people facing the kinds of issues in different parts of the country from these face-to-face meetings. They have these text forms, which were a lot of free text data that staff in their bureau, whenever they want to flag a particular problem, filled in. And this was basically, had never been looked at. Troves and troves of text data unmined. They then had all the web data of people going onto their website and typing in different problems, looking for advice on things. These 3 data sets were very siloed. They were doing, they do quite a lot. They have a 5 or 6 person information management team, so they were pulling out certain statistics, using them to lobby government, but they didn't have a comprehensive overview of what was going on. So the example they came to us with was the payday loans issue a few years ago, where they anecdotally knew it was a problem, but they didn't realize the scale. And the result was they were quite slow to respond, so it took them something like 9 months to a year to actually start lobbying government about this issue, because their data wasn't joined up enough to realise how bad the issue was. So Citizens Advice came to DataKind and said, could data science enable us to anticipate or even predict changes in issues affecting people every day so we can act sooner to prevent these problems? And we thought, hell yeah! There's loads of data. We can do some fancy predictive modelling. We got really excited. Nesta funded us to work on the project for 9 months. It was fantastic. So the idea was, on the one hand, try and build a tool or a model for citizens' advice to help them spot new issues. On the other hand, it was a kind of more surreptitious behaviour change. We were trying to get in there and show them what was possible, new approaches, new methodologies, other kinds of open data, try and get them sharing some of their data, just generally, poking them and prodding them a bit. And so it wasn't a traditional project design. We ran 2 data dive weekends, which is like our version of a hackathon. So it's all about kind of exploratory analysis. We did one long-term piece of work with them to kind of wrap up what was found at these data dives. So that's what that data core is. We had 8 data ambassadors. Billy is one of them. We had at least 50 data scientists working on the project, a ton of pizza, a ton of beer, creative chaos, mayhem. It was great. But as happens with these projects, the kind of initial idea evolved a bit over the months we worked with them. So the idea of like a predictive model to spot new issues morphed a bit. It was actually during the second data dive when we finally had all their data in Elasticsearch, all matched up, and Ian Houston from Pivotal, hi, produced this Kibana dashboard on top of Elasticsearch, showing them, just simply pulling all the streams of data together, starting to show and compare who is going for what issues, using what channel, giving them this broad overview in, potentially it could be in real time, when they suddenly went, holy crap, that's what we want. Screw the predictive model. Even just bringing all these pieces of data together in a dashboard, that would revolutionize how we work. So that's what we did. I'm not actually here to talk to you today about the dashboard. I'm here to talk to you about a side project we did that tags onto the dashboard. So while we produced loads of beautiful graphs of them in the new version of Kibana, and it all looks very pretty, and they're very excited about it, Billy had a bit of a genius idea, and he ran with it. So there's a whole little side project to this, which I'm going to let Billy explain to you guys.
Okay. Thanks, Emma. So actually, I'm going to back one slide. Yep. This is the dashboard that was built, and it's a really, really good dashboard to show citizens' advice what issue people are asking help for. So they may see a lot of people asking for homelessness, a lot of people asking for help with food bank. But what it doesn't tell them is how these different issues are related. So are the people who ask for help with food bank are the same people who ask for help with homelessness? If they are the same people, which one happens first? If we know, for example, people always ask for help with A before they ask for help with B, then potentially we can do some preventive advice and say, well, do you need help with that as well? Then that can help save citizens' advice money and also give them better service. So that's the motivation of what I tried to do, to see if we can discover the relationships from the data about the different kinds of issues that people ask help for. So just a little bit of visualization to justify the work that I did. This is an analysis of the data of a 6 months period. And these are the different types of users, a number of times they have visited. And this is the percentage of usage by them. So we can see that about 30% of the usage is by people who have visited Citizens Advice Bureau at least twice. So, and this is just from a 6 months period. And so I'm sure if we have a longer, data from a longer duration, we will see more people who are multiple users, who are repeat users. So that way, if we can reduce repeated usage, then we can serve their clients better and save money. So if we try to model that as a problem, what does that actually mean? So I talked a little bit about it already. We are basically trying to say, if a client has asked for help with A, is he more likely or less likely to ask for help with B? So statistically, I mean, I feel like I'm teaching the grandmother the subject. I mean, it's basically just calculating the lift. So when we calculate the lift, it basically just finding probability A and B divided by probability of A and probability of B. So far, so simple. And then we can just count those things and calculate and give an estimate of these probabilities. But of course, it's not quite as simple as that. For example, if I have just one instance out of 2, then that's quite a weak piece of evidence. But if I have 500 instances of a particular type of people, people asking for help out of 1,000, then that is quite a much stronger piece of evidence. So we need to take that into account. And another thing that we need to take into account is the temporal element. So if people ask for help with A and then immediately 2 weeks afterwards they ask for help with B, then intuitively, we would think that those two things are quite strongly related. But if the time spent between these two issues is 2 years, then intuitively we would think that maybe they're actually not that strongly related. So we use just an exponential decline to simulate that idea. So that gives us a parameter to tune what is our attention span. Do we want to look at issues that span over a long period of time, or do we just want to look at things that are very tightly linked together in time-wise? Emma talked about the Elasticsearch and the Kibana dashboard. So that is a very big and useful piece of deliverable for citizen advice. And the relationship miner thing that I built rides on basically the same infrastructure. So Elasticsearch becomes the data source that feeds both Kibana and my relationship miner application. So how many of you have heard of Spire? Yeah. So not many people. How many of you have heard of Shiny in R? Yeah, a lot more people. So basically, Spire is the Shiny for Python. It helps you, just get your graph out as a web application very easily. So if you haven't heard of it before, have a look at it. It is great. And finally, at the moment, we have one static data feed from Citizens Advice. And once this goes live, then it will become a regular data feed, and it will feed all the different types of data that Emma talked about into Elasticsearch. Okay, enough talking, demo time. Right, okay, so let me go back to here. So we talked about the different types of issues that people may ask help for. And in Citizens Advice, they encode those issues in a 3-tier level. So here I'm allowing the users to analyze based on which tier, how granular they want to look at the issues. So let's look at issue, at level 2 first, and then we can look at the different issues from different regions. So let's pick the Northeast. The year, at the moment, we only have 1 year's data, so 2014. How many issues I want to look at? The half-life, the parameter that I just talked about in terms of our attention span. So 6 months. Lift 1.2, that means we only want to plot that relationship if A makes B at least 20% more likely. So let's have a look. So this is what it looks like. So what does it actually tell us? The size of the bubble represents how frequently this issue happens in that area. So in the Northeast, there were 15,000 cases of people asking for help. And the second biggest issue looks like council tax arrears, just around 11,000. And then the third one is personal independence payment. And these links represents the lift. So the thicker the line, the stronger the relationship. So for example, here we can see that mortgage and secured loan arrears is a very strong predictor of the next one, which is bankruptcy. So that makes sense. And council tax arrears is a big predictor for water supply and sewage debts. That's interesting, okay. Now, there are a lot of links in this diagram. So let's say we want to reduce the number of links and we only plot the more significant ones. So I'm only plotting the links if they are at least 40% more likely. So now it looks a lot more manageable. So now we can see that mortgage is very strongly related to bankruptcy, and store card and credit card and charge cards are also very strongly related to bankruptcy. Now, one thing that's very interesting is here, we see people ask for help with fuel first, and then they ask for help with fuel debt, and then they ask for help with water supplies. Something's not quite right. If you don't pay your gas bill, the gas company can cut you off. But if you don't pay your water bill, the water company cannot cut you off and cannot send you into jail. So you should always pay, well, if you're running short of money, that's a certain priority. I mean, citizen advice should naturally not tell people that don't pay this and don't pay that. I mean, it's not in the business of telling people, I mean, to get into debt. But it would be very useful to tell them, for example, well, actually, if you're running short of money, there are different consequences. If you don't pay your TV license fee, BBC can put you in jail. If you don't pay your water bill, the water company cannot cut you off. So these are probably things that citizens advice can advise based on knowledge that they discover here. Another thing that's quite interesting is, let's go back to lift 1.2. Another very interesting thing is, do these things have regional variations? I mean, different regions have different economic situations, and people may run into different problems. So if I look at London instead of the Northeast, something very interesting happens. Right, okay. The biggest bubble now is housing benefit, which is normal. I mean, London is the most expensive market in terms of housing, so that makes sense. But one thing that we notice is there are far fewer arrows on this chart than compared with the Northeast. So one hypothesis is, well, we know London, it has the highest concentration of charities helping out people with different types of issues. So if people run into, for example, let's say pension credit issue, they may ask citizens advice for help. But when they run into another problem, they may go for another charity that specializes in that particular issue. So we can see that that sort of relationship of repeat clients asking for different help, the type of helps of different issues, is much weaker in London. So it's something that maybe Citizen Advice can work with other charities to, so that, I mean, they can form a full picture across these issues. And then one more I want to show, which is Wales. Wales is quite interesting. We know that in terms of health outcome, Wales is below the UK. I mean, in terms of life expectancy, in terms of NHS performance, in terms of a few other things. So here we see that disability is actually an issue, bigger issue here in Wales than compared with, for example, when we saw in London or in the Northeast. And here also, disability allowance is strongly linked to carer allowance. So again, this is something that CAB can potentially intervene early. If somebody come and ask for help with disability allowance, maybe they can proactively say, well, do you have a carer? Is he getting the right support that he needs? So that immediately help resolve a problem further down the line. Now, before I pass the mic back to Emma, I just want to show you one more thing. Here we also, what we're looking at here is the top 30 issues in Wales. And some of them may have, relationship together, but the things that are most strongly related to, for example, where we looked at money problem, debt relief orders, may not be within the top 30 issues. So what we can do next is to look at that issue in particular. So if we go to level 2 issues, and we just focus on one particular issue, so it's debt relief order. and 6 months. Okay. Wow. Okay, so a lot of links. So let me customize that a bit. Still a lot of links. So let's look at a shorter time frame. Okay, so this is a bit more manageable now. So we can see in London, what is the strongest predictor of people asking for help with debt relief order? So actually, it is about credit reference agency. That is the strongest predictor. It's the link is thickest. But there are also a lot of other things like building society and overdraft and unsecured loans and a few other things. And if we push this even further up, then we can see this a bit more clearly now. So you may wonder, I mean, if I have this information as citizens' advice, what is it going to do, I mean, for me? There are several things that they can apply this. One is to train their advisors to be more aware of the cluster of issues that their clients experience, so that, I mean, the advisors become more effective. The other is also to structure the organization in such a way that these teams are co-located together. For example, people who deal with consumer debt and people who deal with utility debt, probably very different people experience these issues. So once they discover the relationship and how these issues are clustered together, then they can structure their organization in such a way that it becomes more effective in dealing with their client's issue. Just one more thing. Sorry, Emma. Just one more thing before I pass it back to you, which is all the things that you saw was built with open source tools. So this being PyData, of course, it was built in Python. The Spire I talked about already. So once you have that graph of different issues, how they're linked together, you can analyze that with NetworkX, which is a fantastic library. And the visualization was done, unfortunately, in JavaScript. But I mean, with Spire, you can integrate JavaScript quite easily as well. Okay. Sorry. Okay, I play from here. Never mind. Use the, yeah.
Right. So the main point of the app sitting next to the dashboard is it gives Citizens Advice Bureau a much more holistic overview of their data, and it gives them a way to explore their hunches. So previously what was happening was that staff thought, this and this might be connected, and they'd send emails to the information management team, who 3 days later would send them back a small spreadsheet, and they'd have a look at it and see if they could find anything in there. So this gives them the tools that they can start looking at the data themselves, and they can start exploring issues, which is quite revolutionary for the organization. It's still being implemented, so we're going to have to wait a bit, I think, and see kind of the longer-term impact on what it all means. But in general, everyone's very excited about these new tools. They've gone from fairly static bar charts to more interactive visualizations, and they've actually started opening up their data. So during the project, Citizens Advice Bureau shared their data with St Mungo's Broadway, who are a massive homelessness charity, and they linked up data. They've started talking about data, I hear, much more regularly in meetings. They ran their own internal data dive a couple months ago. So they could start, kind of had a Friday, they got all the staff together in a room, anyone who had any knowledge of data in the organization came together and they had their own kind of exploratory analysis session. So much more than just simply providing, an app and a dashboard. I think we slightly changed their mindset, which is probably the most exciting bit about the whole project. And I think that's it. So we're happy to take questions if we still have 5 minutes.
Do we have any questions?
Is there any difficulty in getting data from the charities? Like, are there any legal issues or privacy issues?
Like any good bureaucracy. There are always issues. So citizens' advice, I mean, it has like 400 people in its HQ. It has very stringent data protection regulations. It was a slow process of hand-holding. What was quite interesting is that we were really, really sneaky. So we went in and just said, oh, we could help you. And really in the back of our heads, we were like, and we could get you to open up your data too. We didn't tell them that. So it's after we did the first data dive with them, we did some great analysis for them, we showed them how great it could be. We then slowly started being like, and imagine if you linked your data with another charity, imagine what that would be like. Yeah, it was a slow process, a lot of persuading, a lot of non-disclosure agreements signed by different parties at different points. Yeah.
We all had to sign NDAs to get our hands on the citizens' advice data.
Yeah, but I imagine that's the same in most sectors, maybe?
One question? I live in Wales. Could you repeat the question for the mic, for the video?
So the question is, one of the bubble was children. Yeah, it just says children. Unfortunately, we don't have a representative from Citizens Advice here. They do the categorization, so they'll be able to explain a lot more than I could do, I'm afraid, sorry.
I just want to know how much you
Yeah.
Okay, no more questions? In that case, perfect timing. Let's thank Emma and Lee.